All
Yeah.
right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Hey,
I
you
see
guys.
Sean and Sonia already here. Annie was like a half an hour early. We love an early bird. We love it. Um, Thank you guys. You are like our tried and true. You're our tried or true. We are tried and true by you. But anyway, we are really excited tonight because we have Lori Latimer here with us, and she has a ton to teach us, and she's also a really, really cool person. We got to talk. I think we talked for like an hour and a half yesterday,
We
and it went
did.
by really, really fast. I didn't even
Yeah.
realize it. So Lori is part of our true crime community. She's been a family law paralegal for over 30 years. Does not look like that's possible, by the way. She's also the host of the podcast Grief with Grace, which started in 2020 after her son Greg passed away in 2019. So she does a lot of work with women, helping them heal from trauma and loss using tools like breath work and karmic astrology, which we did not get to discuss in our hour and a half yesterday,
Right.
but very interested in that. She's a native of Southern California, but lives in Northwest Georgia now. And she is a mom of 2 sons and a grandma to 3 grandsons. So thank you for being here, Lori. It's
Thank
awesome
you.
to have you.
I am so excited and so honored to be here. And I
Aw,
posted on X, or I guess X, Twitter, whatever, earlier.
Yeah.
Following Josh from 2 weeks ago is like, those are big shoes to fit in. So
Oh gosh, no, you are
You'd be
just as
great.
amazing. And I think it's cool to put faces, even though we have our little pictures. It's cool to put faces in this community, with names and voices, and that we're actual people. So it's really cool to be able to highlight other people in our community. And hopefully everybody will check out your podcast also, which when we're done, I will put in the information section at the bottom of this so people can follow you too.
well,
So
thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah, of course, of course. So Lori, tell us about you. Tell us you have over 30 years in family law paralegal work. So how did you fall into family law paralegal work? Because really the paralegals do everything. I mean, no offense to lawyers, but it's like the nurses, like mad respect.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
lot of work.
it
That's
is.
exactly how I describe it to people. Paralegal is to an attorney like a nurse is to a doctor. And I will say, I've worked with one attorney for over 22 years, and he tells people, "Oh, I work for her," and I'm laughing and going, "Yeah, okay, whatever."
Oh, that's nice.
But I fell into it, totally just fell into it. I was working as a secretary when I first moved to Atlanta. And I was young, I was 29. I had just had my second baby. And I worked with a lady who lived down near me. And there was an attorney down there who worked out of his house and was looking for an assistant slash paralegal. And this lady, it's funny to say this now, but she was older. She was probably 40. I'm like way past that now, but she didn't want to work out of somebody's house. And so she told me about it. And I was so happy to do it. And he's the one who taught me how to be a paralegal. And I had great experience with him. It was just, and this was back in the day, this was back in the early 90s before mediation was really big. And so we went to trial all the time with
I
cases.
didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it was, it was definitely different back then, but I learned a lot and
that's cool.
Was exposed to a lot of really good. I've been very, very fortunate to work with really good attorneys who have very good clients. We've always had very good clientele, wealthy people, names people would know, professional athletes, lots of professional athletes, because
interesting.
Most of my career was in Buckhead, which I refer to as the Beverly Hills of Atlanta. So people know Beverly Hills. Well, this is the upscale community of Atlanta. And so lots of heads of corporations, and, we represented one TV judge. And so we've had very wealthy people. And I've often said, it's kind of funny, haha, but the more money people have, the worse they behave in a divorce.
Yeah. I think that's actually very accurate. I mean, that's a whole subset.
Yeah.
Of family law. I've actually had some cases with some reality show stars, and it's a whole other ball game.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
we've had those, and
Mhm.
and you have to learn how to manage the personalities,
Yes.
and 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 you have to learn how to work with each person's personality so that they will work with you to give you what you need, because it's their life, not mine. I
Yeah.
don't know the situation.
Mhm.
And if you don't learn their personality and how to work with them, then it's not going to be a good relationship. And so
Right.
that's also part of why I think I've been so successful in my career. Plus, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, which has helped immensely in
Mhm.
understanding. And I have a lot of compassion for people. I've been through more than one divorce of my own. Not one of my prouder accomplishments in life, but it is what it is. So I
Yeah.
understand it from both sides. And so I can have empathy and compassion for what they're going
Right. Right. Yeah, it does give you a different perspective than somebody
Yeah.
who hasn't been through, I mean, that's with anything, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
And
Yeah.
knowing the complexities.
Yeah. We talked the other day about family law when we were on Zoom, and how hotly charged it can be, Lori. I mean, and as a former police officer, I can honestly tell all of you viewers and the two of you that some of the craziest stuff that I went to, the most highly charged and volatile things I went to, were related to family law, like custody issues, like estate stuff, things like that. I mean, people just go crazy on that. Yeah, it's really scary.
They do. And I've always, and this is, it was interesting because at the end of your conversation with Josh, he talked about how, he thinks family law is more um, concerning than criminal law. And it's
Mhm.
true, because this is your life that you're in a different way, but especially when you put custody into it. I mean, there was that case in Las Vegas this week where
Yes,
the,
Which I wanted to talk about for sure.
definitely.
I
I don't know
mean,
if you guys know about it. First of all, pause for a second. Jay is here. If anybody knows Jay from J-Bo Nation on
yeah,
YouTube, everybody,
Mhm.
oh,
he just
Jay,
said hit
Hi,
that
Jay.
like button on the way in. I'm a little starstruck right now. I just have to say.
Thanks for being
Um,
here, Jay. We really
yeah,
greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Jay's
yeah,
amazing.
we do. I appreciate it. And yes, the Adelsons, Jay's favorite people on the planet. He has a special relationship. I'm only kidding. I'm being facetious. But yeah, the Adelsons, absolutely. That which relates to, so this Vegas case was uh,
It's a custody
it was a
Yeah,
custody
right.
mediation meeting, or I don't know if it was, I think it was a
deposition.
deposition
Mhm.
deposition meeting. And so it's a little bit complicated. You have the biological mom, obviously, versus biological dad. Bio mom and her new husband, who was also her attorney in this litigation,
Right.
were
Goodness.
there on one side of the table. And then uh, the biological father was not present, but his attorney was there, who also happened to be his father,
Mhm.
who was an attorney, was representing him. And the father was 77. And I suppose he had, a couple days prior to that, learned that his cancer had returned. He had
Right.
and that it was terminal. And so he showed up, the mom and the mom's new husband slash attorney was there. And the grandfather essentially stood up and shot and killed the his ex-daughter-in-law and her new husband.
Yep.
So tragic. I mean, and other lives were spared. And then he turned it
Turned the
on
gun on
himself.
himself. Right.
So very tragic, very, very upsetting. And one of the things that we had been talking about, which is similar to the Adelson case, is that, well, we call it, in for those of you guys who don't know, I do custody evaluation and family law psychology. So when we call it the tribe. So the tribe is the extended family, and it's not just the extended family, it's the enmeshed extended family and
Hmm.
neighborhood and friends, who everyone's kind of sickly intertwined with one
Right.
another, like the Adelsons, and how much more destructive those people can be to a custody case than the actual litigants themselves. This is a case of that, obviously, with some really interesting, potentially legal, ethical, maybe just bad common sense ideas, with the
Hmm.
dad representing his son and the husband representing the new wife and
I think that with the new husband representing the wife, I think it goes even beyond just ethical. I think I think he could have been sued for malpractice. Now, obviously, his wife would have had to sue him,
Mhm.
but he was not.
But
He didn't do family law. He did
that's
business
right.
law and contract law. Now,
That's right.
the grandfather, the bio dad's father, did do family law and he did
Mhm.
criminal law. But I tell people that when you are going through any kind of a family law matter, hire a family law attorney because it is so special.
Please.
It's like if you need brain surgery, don't go to a gastroenterologist or whatever,
Amen.
Yep, there you
Amen.
go.
a specialist.
There is
And
nothing
so,
worse than working with a parent, from my point of view, nothing worse than working with a parent who has hired some random non-family law attorney.
Yeah,
exactly.
They don't, it's a whole other, even the court itself is its own culture.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the rules for family court are so different
Yes.
and the nuances in it are different. And so this is so tragic. And I think there could have been a different outcome if these people had chosen different attorneys,
I
but
agree. I agree. Yeah, when I heard that, Lori, what you just said about when I heard it earlier about how the father was representing and so on and so forth, it just didn't sit well with me at all. It seemed a little bit, I don't want to say
yeah.
unethical, but kind of.
It's just it's so emotionally charged, more so than a criminal case. It's just so much more complicated. And I don't want to say more complicated because that's probably, I don't mean to undermine the
Mhm.
complication of criminal, cases, but it's
Yeah.
so with the enmeshed emotional junk,
Yep.
you have to have some neutral people in there to keep things under control, or it's just going to spiral. I
You know,
mean,
I've worked cases where the attorney on the other side of the case isn't related to their client, but they get so personally enmeshed in the case that
mhm,
that's the thing. They lose their objectivity. And if the attorney cannot
mhm.
be objective, then the entire thing just blows up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
And this is why I think probably all attorneys, but family law attorneys really need some psych training, in addition to help them understand. Okay, I'm going to talk about there. So I'm not talking about all people that get divorced. I'm talking about people who end up in high conflict custody litigation. So I need to qualify that because
Uh-huh.
when I speak about these things, I don't want to make it sound like this is most people who get divorced. No, most people who get divorced with kids can do this stuff easy peasy.
Yes.
Most people don't have to go to a hearing. They can figure things out. Sometimes they still want a judge to sign off on a parenting plan is fine, but typically they don't have to go to a hearing. And they aren't in custody battles. Like that's not a default thing that if you're divorced, have kids, there's a custody battle. No, most people figure this stuff out. So we're talking about 2% or I'm sorry, 10% of the people divorcing who have children end up
Mhm.
in some more bigger litigation, like, with custody and need a judge to sign off on that. 2% of that 10% can be considered high conflict families where it's high conflict with the child custody situation. So it's a very small percentage of people. Now we
Mhm.
hear about it a lot because of what we do. So it seems
Right.
like, man, why can't people get it together? But it's a very small, but these people get in these situations because in that 2%, more often than not, one or both of these parents have personality disorders,
Mhm.
untreated mental health
Mhm.
issues, just really poor boundaries, really like generational trauma. I mean,
Mhm.
they're dealing with major issues. They don't get themselves in this situation just out of nowhere. Like this is a years in the making situation,
Mhm.
probably even before they got married, so
Bad
Absolutely.
decision making all around.
bad decision making. These people tend to be very impulsive. These
Mhm.
relationships are often like full of excitement and
Mhm.
um, they're really thrilling when they get together and it's amazing. And then, but they very quickly dissolve.
Yeah.
Right.
It's extremes. So these people so you have to imagine like already this is a setup for, we see custody issues in so many cases, so many underlying criminal cases, whether it's the reason for the crime or it's just an underlying situation going on. We see it a lot of times. I was actually
Well,
trying to make a list of all of them, but and then the grandparents, I think the Adelson case is just fascinating. I mean, it is like a textbook case study.
Big
I
time.
mean,
it's so much.
fascinating family dynamic.
But yesterday you mentioned the case in Maryland where the father had lost custody and went and shot and killed the judge in his driveway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is that volatile at times. But
Yes.
again, there are underlying issues that, sometimes one parent will lose their job and that causes them to snap. I mean, there are so many different things that go into play with it, but it can be a powder keg waiting to explode, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's a very risky thing to, for the attorneys, the judges, the paralegals, because you have probably even more contact with them than the attorney does,
absolutely.
and probably
Yeah.
easier to access and contact than the attorney is. And the custody evaluators that are involved, child protective services. I mean, we had a case here in my state where a grandfather had a hit list, and unfortunately managed to get to the mother and killed her outside the courthouse. But he was on his way to go kill the custody evaluator, the attorneys. Awful.
Yep.
So it is a very,
very awful. Yeah. We didn't talk about this yesterday, Lori, on Zoom, but I've talked to Rachel about it, but we also have a case here locally. I live on the Oregon coast, you guys, for anyone who doesn't know that. And we have a case here involving that's going to go to court that I will end up testifying on when it goes to court, that involves a local doctor. It's been in the news, so I can talk about it in generalities, but essentially it was also a custody thing. The mother, when I was a forensic interviewer, brought the child who she started out, I think, age 5 and finished up around age 7. I interviewed her 3 times over that time period. And basically, they were going through a divorce. The doctor had custody. Mom wanted custody. Mom ended up having some very shady people in her family. I'll talk generalities. She hired those people to come to the house where the doctor and his new wife were living, and they murdered him over this custody thing. And very graphic, very disgusting case, but it was all over custody. She brought the child to me originally to be interviewed those 3 times because she was alleging that the child was being sexually abused by the victim. And there was never any, we just never got there. I believe the child was being coached. But so, yeah, that's another example of how volatile it can get with these custody things.
Well, it doesn't, and here's the other thing, it doesn't even have to be custody. Often it can be over money. The attorney I've worked with for over 22 years had a case before I went to work with him. 1987. Now, this was in the South, in Georgia, in 1987. Interracial marriage was still not very accepted here. And the attorney I work with represented the wife, who was a Black woman. And her husband was older and very wealthy, not from his own making or his own work. He had inherited money from, I think, his uncle. He was from Boston. And they had a prenup. And I think she was supposed to get maybe $1 million out of the prenup. And he didn't want to give her any, or maybe not even $1 million. He didn't want to give her anything.
Yeah.
He was in Palm Beach. She was at her house in Buckhead the morning they were supposed to have a hearing on the prenup, on a motion to enforce the prenup, in the afternoon. And that morning there was a knock at her door, and she answered the door, and a man was standing there holding a box with pink roses in it. And she took the box and said, "Thank you." And then the man pulled out a gun and shot and killed her. Everybody knew the husband had been involved, but he's in Palm Beach. So how do you prove that?
Right.
They couldn't prove it for the longest time. And this was in the days before cell phones. And so they tried him in federal court on some charge dealing with like arranging a murder over the telephone. And they couldn't, the judge hated having to dismiss the case, but had to dismiss the case.
It's
Then
wild.
her parents filed a civil suit against him in Florida, and they won. And I can't remember how many, several $1 million judgment against him. So he fled and he went on the lam. He went to Costa Rica for a while. I think he went to Mexico. I don't remember where all he went. It was profiled on America's Most Wanted a couple of times. And then in, I think maybe 2002, they profiled it again on America's Most Wanted, and someone in Thailand recognized him and called it into the tip line. And they arrested him, brought him back. He fought extradition, but they brought him back here to Atlanta. Big murder trial. It was televised. This was in probably 2006. And they convicted him. They were trying to get the death penalty because it was a murder for hire. Part of it was they finally found the hitman through the hitman's ex-girlfriend. The hitman lived in North Carolina, had come. I mean, this was like,
how do these people find hitmen? I don't like, how does that even happen?
especially back then.
I know,
with no
right?
social media,
Like,
no
go
internet.
through the phone book and just start, hi,
Yeah.
possibly just wondering, you know, like, what do you even ask?
But
Are you a
they
hitman? Nope. Okay,
convicted-
bye. I mean,
They
what?
convicted this guy, and he's serving the rest of his miserable life. And they did not give him
Okay,
the jury,
well,
did not
good.
give him the death penalty, but he's serving the rest of his miserable life in prison, and that's where he belongs. And
Yeah.
there are no, these people had no children, but again, this was all over money.
Yeah. Well, you know
Yeah.
what they say, money's a root of evil, and it truly is, you know, in many
Well,
cases.
yeah, and Jay, that's a good, yeah, Jay said Charlie's question was, do you have somebody who could hurt someone? And I'm convinced, you know, I think Charlie had a perfect, it was like an opportunity. He was an opportunist. I think he met this woman who he knew was connected to some people.
He was shady.
Mhm.
And he invited that in because he thought that could be useful to him, because that's what psychopathic people do, is they use other people for their gain. And I think there's no way that he actually loved that woman, or he completely
Right.
used her. He knew who she was hooked up with, and that's why he was so bold to be able to ask her that, because he knew it was true.
Mhm.
And he knew it from the beginning. And that's, yeah, I mean, so I guess these people do end up, I feel like, though, in like Miami, it's a little easier to find some shady people. Like where I live, it's like Suburbiaville. I don't know who in the world I would ask about a hitman. Which is, that's, honey, you don't, everything
Probably
will
a
be
good thing.
okay.
Well, I think that's true in any big city. I'm sure that's true in Atlanta and Los
Yeah,
Angeles.
of
and,
course.
you know, all the
Yeah.
big cities. But yeah, I live far from Atlanta now, fortunately. Don't go to Buckhead
Good.
very often, because Buckhead has become very unsafe. Let's put it that way.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So what do you guys do, Lori, when you have a client who, you know, there's potential for shady business? You know how fueled it is, you know how much they hate the other
Right.
litigant, and how do you guys navigate that? Like, if you feel like someone is potentially dangerous, or just
It's
kind
an
of flying
interesting
off the handle.
question. Yeah, no, that's a good question.
Yeah. We tell them they need to go to therapy.
Mhm.
Now, fortunately, we've been very lucky, and most of the time, it's the person on the other side.
That's good.
Rick, the
Well,
attorney I work with, is very good at reading people. And, you know, I'm sitting here trying to think of anyone. We had one client one time who I kind of set him up. I knew he was going to lie on some interrogatory responses. Interrogatories are written questions that the other attorney sends, and your client has to respond in writing. And there was a question in there. I knew he was going to lie. And so I got him on the phone to talk about the situation first. And I wrote it all down. I wrote down what he said. Then when I sent the interrogatories to him that we had received, he did lie. And Rick fired him. Rick told him,
okay.
I can't represent you, because Rick will not do that.
Yeah, well, you can't. I mean, yeah, if you know they're lying, then you can't.
But there are some attorneys who they don't
Uh,
care. They'll, you know,
That's
but
true.
we did have a case. Gosh, this case went on and on and on forever. And it was a custody case. These kids were out of high school by the time the case ended.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
But the mother had severe mental health issues and would not stop litigating. and she filed one case after another. I mean, at one time we had, I think, 7 cases at the Georgia appellate court, because she would lose in the trial court and then she would appeal, and she would lose in the appellate court and then it was ridiculous, and she just wouldn't stop. And she had, when we got the verdict from the trial judge one night late in December one year, the judge, who now is overseeing a very high profile case here in Atlanta, had probably 7 or 8 deputies in the courtroom because he was concerned about the reaction. Fortunately, there was none, and maybe it was because of the heavy police presence, but that was concerning. And, you know, walking to your car in downtown Atlanta at night in the dark, it's concerning.
Yeah.
Because
you never know.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. There've been a couple times I've requested escort back out just to make sure I get to my car. And, you know, I think, when you work with enough people, you sort of, you know who you need to watch out for and who you don't. But that's
I mean,
really
we have had, you know, I'm thinking of one man that we represented, nice man, but he was a severe alcoholic, like had been told. And we had a woman many years ago, same thing. I mean, they were told, if you drink again, you will die, because their livers were failing, their organs were failing, because they were such severe alcoholics. And they were in custody cases, and they, you know, we always tell people, you don't win a custody case, you let the other person lose. And or one person doesn't win, the other person loses the case because of their behavior. And it's true. And, you know, alcohol is one of the biggest issues that we deal with.
And that's, and we were talking about this yesterday too. You know, people think it is about winning and losing for a lot of these litigants in the high conflict cases. And it's not about the kids. It's about winning and losing. It's about hatred for the other parent. It's not about love. It's not about protecting the kids and loving the kids. And unfortunately, some of these kids, their parents litigate their entire lives. Like you said, those kids had aged out and she was still litigating. Like, I've had, in the midst of custody evaluations, 2 of the kids age out. I'm like, why are we doing this? Why are you guys, like, you could have put your 5 kids through college 6 times each with the amount of money that you've paid attorneys and psychologists. And
oh my God, it's
money unbelievable.
Attorney's fees is more than some people will make in their entire lives.
It's true.
Yes.
It's true.
Yes.
It's totally wild. I'll never understand that. Like, just put your ego aside for your kids for 1 second. Like,
well, and that's a really good point that you're making, Rachel, because, you know, both as a police officer, the 20 years that I was in, and as a forensic child interviewer, I dealt with so many of those cases where the parents were just going at each other's throats, and the poor kiddos, they were just a mess. And they had nobody to really speak for them, or, you know, they were caught in the middle. It was really disgusting. And, you know, it's just not right for the kids. It's just not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. No. Lori, speaking of kids, I want to make sure we talk about your podcast and your life experience with that. And you know, if you would want to share your story about your son and what led you to be on this format, that'd be awesome.
No pressure. Totally up to you.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I love to talk about it, to educate people. So Greg was 29. And he was my second child. And so he hadn't lived at home in, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years. He was in a good place in life. He had a full-time job, and he was in school, finishing college and making straight A's. The kid that barely, you know, football was his passion. That's the only reason he got out of high school, because he was very smart. He always knew stuff, but he just didn't do his work. And in January of 2019, one Sunday morning, I got that awful call no parent ever wants to get. And his girlfriend said, Greg's dead. And I'm like, what? I had just seen him the day before. He was fine. And I did not know that he was using recreational drugs. And Greg liked to have fun. And I guess that was his way of relaxing. I don't condone that, but he apparently had bought some cocaine. I found out couple months later, when the tox report came back, that he had fentanyl in him, and he didn't have enough fentanyl in him to kill him. He didn't have enough cocaine in him to kill him. He didn't have enough alcohol in him to kill him. But apparently the combination of the alcohol and the fentanyl just caused his heart to stop.
Yep.
And I'm like, how can you just be gone? I mean, it's just so surreal to me.
Yeah.
And I talk about it because I want people to understand, when you hear that somebody died of drugs, the immediate thought is, oh, they were a drug addict.
Right.
And I needed to know if Greg had been abusing drugs. And so I did something absolutely horrible, but I read his autopsy report because I needed to know. And all of his organs were perfectly healthy. They were fine for his age. So he had not been abusing drugs. He was a recreational user, but fentanyl has changed the game with drugs.
Absolutely.
No. And because there wasn't enough fentanyl, I mean, there was barely, I mean, first of all, you barely need any fentanyl to be killed
yeah.
anyway. But there was such a minute amount that what the conclusion everyone came to is that the knife that was used to cut the cocaine he bought had touched fentanyl. And there was transfer.
It's wild.
And because Greg, first of all, if you're going to take fentanyl, you're going to take more than what was in him. And Greg would never have done that. He was in such a good place in life. And there's no changing that. And so 2019 was just like a blur to me. I
can't even imagine.
Of memories.
Yeah.
But through it, and I had started on a personal development journey and then a spiritual journey about 10 years before that, after my last divorce. And my mom died 10 years ago in June. And then I started studying. And I mean, remember, I've been a paralegal in family law for 30 years. I started studying the afterlife because I had a couple of conversations with people and they told me things about my mom that they could not have known. And I believe that all of that was creating a foundation for when Greg died, because I had this faith and this knowing and this belief that he was okay and that I would see him again. And so I started looking at how I could help other women. And I started my podcast about a year and a half after he left. And it quickly grew from, I thought I was going to be talking to bereaved moms. And all of a sudden I was getting emails from men and from women who not only weren't bereaved mothers, but they didn't have children at all. But it was helping people heal. And so now I talk more about healing, and I'm actually going to be changing the name of the podcast in about a month or 2 months, because it has grown way beyond what I saw. But it's all about helping people heal from trauma, from loss, from experiences that can be so horrific, but I believe that we can heal from them. We just need some guidance and we need to be open. And I am doing things, karmic astrology and energy work, things that to me 15 years ago, I would have thought, you're crazy, you're this. And now here I am because I've experienced these things and I've seen the effect that they've had on my life and clients I've worked with. And they are what have helped me live the last 5 years. Plus, the other thing is, I want to live a life that he would be proud of and that honors his life and legacy.
Absolutely.
So it's not about me. It's about helping other people and keeping his memory alive.
Yeah. And Lori, this wasn't that long ago that all this happened. And
No, not at all.
you have such a gift of like being able to connect with people. I can tell that. And it's just like, I just see how you've fallen into this. Like, obviously you never would have wished for it to happen this way.
Right.
But what a gift you have to connect with people and help other people heal. It's just really, really cool.
It is very apparent.
It is an honor to him. It is an honor to Greg. I mean, absolutely. Holy cow. I mean,
we don't, from what I believe and from what I've experienced, we don't have a choice in the things that happen to us externally. Like, I could not change that.
Right.
I have a choice in how I react, how I respond.
Of course.
And so, yes, I could have gone down the path that a lot of bereaved mothers do, and I don't judge them for it because I understand. I could have gotten on prescription pain pills. I could have, started drinking to, numb the pain. all that does is hurt me. And I know, and here's the thing that I realized. If I had died before my mom did, would I want her to give up on her life? Would I want
Mm.
her to be miserable the rest of her life? I have the ups and the downs. There are days where I'm sitting here bawling my eyes out because
Yeah.
Sure.
my child
Yeah.
is gone. And yet I can't stay in that space.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, no, it's not something I consciously chose, but I do get to choose how I live the rest of my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
we
how
agree.
you choose to immerse yourself in that, and in what way, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm sure Greg's very proud of
Oh,
the work you're doing. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
absolutely. My
And you're
goodness.
right. I mean, you do, some people like yourself, Lori, they have the ability to rise up and
Mhm.
not wallow and fall apart and, ruin their life and the lives of everyone around them. I know of people in our distant family that have had the same issues. They've lost loved ones and they have
Mhm.
chosen to just be a basket case
Yeah.
and not, do things the way you've done things. So it's just, I guess I just want to tell you, it's wonderful and it's very refreshing to see that
Thank you.
mindset. Absolutely. I really commend you for that.
Mhm.
That's fabulous.
So, Lori, I mean, so one of the I mean, obviously you're part of our community, the true crime community, and you're such a great presence.
Hmm.
There's so much trash that comes through. Hey,
Yeah.
it's been one of those days. I don't know if you
It
noticed on
has.
Twitter. I was like, gosh, where's the
Oh,
block
yeah.
button? This is like,
I
like,
know.
I went to sleep and there's like a group of people that was like, we're gonna get her. And like I woke up to it and I was like, what? All right, bye. So but these cases, I mean, let's put it that way. Like, are there, like Sebastian's case, for example,
Hmm.
they've lost a child and you're seeing people reacting to this, and what's that like for you? I mean, are you a person that can just sort of let it roll off? Does that infuriate you watching her, the mom
Hmm.
react the way she is? Like, what is that like for you?
Yeah, that I do not understand. If that was if my child had gone missing, and I can speak, somewhat because I lost a child. If my
Right.
child was missing, I would be up 22 hours a day looking for that child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would not, I would not leave. I would do anything and everything. I would be begging for help. I would be
Mhm.
knocking on people's doors. I would be doing things that the police probably wouldn't want me to do, but I would be out there
Right.
doing whatever I could do. Um, but I think that my experience in family law has helped me navigate social media in the way that you're describing, because when I was first in family law, like I said, I was very young and I didn't know how to set boundaries. I didn't know how to leave it at the
Mhm.
office. And
Hmm.
I would get attached to, especially the cases involving children. And it took an emotional toll on me. And so I left for a couple of years. And when I came back to it, I was able to put up boundaries
Hmm.
that I also do on social media, like the Karen Reed case, up in Boston.
Yes.
That whole thing is just like, I can't figure out. I don't know a lot about the case, but there are people on both sides that are so extreme
Oh,
with
yeah.
they have their heels dug in so far. And I'm just looking at all this and I'm not going to get involved in any of it. I mean, I would be a perfect juror for that case because I know nothing about the case.
Same. I don't want to know. It's too complicated at this point.
Way too complicated.
Yeah.
But I can't, I guess because I've worked in this field for so long, I have to play devil's advocate with clients a lot
Hmm.
and say, okay, this is what you're saying, but what if they ask you this? What if they question that? And so I can look at it from that perspective, kind of from a 30,000 foot view perspective.
Mhm.
Hmm.
But the cases with kids like Harmony Montgomery
Yes.
or um, oh, Letitia Stout, what was the little boy's name that she killed?
Gannon.
Gannon.
Gannon. Yeah.
Gannon.
All of these cases, JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan,
Mhm.
and these cases, there are times where I have to turn it off because knowing that I would give my life to have my child back again, and these people intentionally abused and did the most horrific things to their own children, there are times I have to turn it off and just step away from social media for my own emotional and mental health.
Yeah.
The Sebastian case really bothers me because for many reasons, but also because I have a 5-year-old grandson who is autistic and he is nonverbal. And I think about him and I would do anything to keep him safe. If that was my grandchild, I would be out walking.
Yeah.
To look for him, to look for clues, to find anything, and to not for the mother not to call 911, I can't understand that either. And I understand everybody reacts differently. Yes, we hear that.
Sure.
Again, people may have criticized me because I didn't burst into tears the minute that I got the call because
Right.
I couldn't even fathom that it was true.
You can't absorb that immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If my child all of a sudden wasn't there one morning, the first call I would make would be to 911.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
We talked about.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
Thanks,
Scott.
Rach. Sorry. So we talked about this yesterday on Zoom, and excuse me, guys, having interviewed a lot of people, I mean, one thing I learned and throughout my career is words are very, very easy. Okay. Especially, and I've worked missing person cases before, missing kiddos and so on and so forth. Words are super easy.
Yeah.
And you can say almost anything and sometimes actually believe your own garbage that you're saying. But actions, you guys, to me, speak in missing person cases and other cases speak way louder. And I'm not going to throw out there that these people are guilty because I'm just not going to do that on our show. But I am going to tell you guys that the behavior that we're seeing from them is very weird.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, at the very least. At the very least, it is.
Lack thereof doing anything. And I'm very concerned about this case too. I'm hoping that it doesn't turn into a situation like we have here in Oregon with Kyron Horman, who disappeared in 2010. And, that case was butchered from the get-go. And a lot of people are pretty certain that the stepmom did it. But there's never been an arrest. Kyron's still missing. I just really pray that this case doesn't turn out that way too.
Yeah.
That's my
rant.
It
is. And it's so... The reason I'm on this today is partly because, people who are absolutely no one can say, oh, you're guilty. You're not. I mean, it's just
right.
You can have your opinion. That's fine based on your own experience and whatever. But, there are patterns of behavior that we see across cases that are similar.
Yeah.
And that's part of how, Lori, we were talking about, knowing who's dangerous, who's potentially someone you need to be careful of. That's how we know is patterns of behavior from other people who have done this stuff. And so, I think the trolls are out in troves today about how you can't judge how a person grieves. You can't judge how, sorry, my internet looks like it's really bad. Am I cutting out at all?
No, you're not. You're good.
Oh, cool. Okay. Because I keep getting worried about that. Okay. Sorry.
No.
But you don't know how this mother actually feels. She's grieving. She just lost her son, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, maybe to me, that kind of behavior tells me either you have some serious attachment issues to the point you really don't grieve like most people would, or you really aren't responding in the way most people would, or there's some other reason. Lori, I'm with you, Lori, the way you said you would be reacting. I mean,
right.
I don't even know if I'd be able to breathe anymore. I just even thinking about it, I find myself holding my breath. I
don't know. And I don't know which is worse. And I don't like to even use that word. But is it worse to be in my situation where I know my child is gone? Or is it worse to not know where your child is and to leave the state?
Yeah.
Make yourself completely unavailable.
Looking, and didn't she get rid of her? Didn't they change their phone numbers or something?
They put their social media has been put to private.
I mean,
mom
I
and dad,
would,
this
There we
mom
go.
and
but
stepdad.
then
Yeah.
what if this little boy, what if this young man is out there and or somebody, I
Mhm.
just can't fathom. I just can't.
It's hard to
Mhm.
wrap your head around. Yeah, like that you wouldn't make yourself as available as possible. And like you're not that you're like you don't want to keep your life after that. I'm not saying that, but like your life to yourself is so like doesn't even matter compared to the situation that's going on in your child's life. So, the whole like,
Mm.
oh, people are threatening us, whatever. I'd be like, let them come on then.
Yeah.
I'm staying here. You can come
I
kill
mean,
me. Like there's
I
nothing that would
still
make me
have some
leave.
of Greg's clothes and
Yeah,
books, like notebooks that he's written in from college and things
totally.
like that, because I will not get, and to just
To
leave
leave the
when you
Yeah.
home.
don't know where, if your child is still alive or not, I
No,
just can't.
it doesn't make any sense. And
No.
it's like for somehow it makes sense for whatever is the truth, but
Well, then
it's
there's
Yeah.
hard.
the
I
other
just
part of that story the with the stepfather's ex-wife. We talked about the video she
yeah,
did.
Right.
That's
Right.
a whole other weird story. So this whole thing has so many
it's
legs and
weird.
twists and turns
Oh,
that there's something definitely shady going on with the whole thing.
But what
yeah.
I find is like the larger community, not larger community, there are people who just like are normalizing every bit of this. And there is
Mhm.
nothing normal about anything these people are doing. Even the biological dad, who I don't personally think is involved in it, his situation isn't normal. This is not, none of this is normal, people.
Yeah.
It's not. CPS
Rachel,
being
you and
involved
I.
in your family is not normal.
No,
That is,
no.
yeah,
No. Rachel, you and I have talked about it a lot. I mean, my thoughts on it. I mean, this
yeah.
is one of the most confusing cases with all the misinformation. And Lori, I know you're nodding your head too, with all the misinformation that's out there and all of the confusion and the whole investigation piece and no information coming out at all. It's one of the weirdest cases I can remember in recent times. It truly is.
I
And for
mean, I'm
you to
sorry,
say
but
that, Scott, yeah.
People
Yeah,
do
I mean, I've seen weird stuff,
things.
guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but no trace at all of this child.
yeah,
Something,
yeah.
something is fishy, to
I
say the
agree.
least.
There's a lot of fish.
Yeah. And I
A lot
just
of
pray that
fish.
this
Oh,
child is found and is okay, but it's been almost 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's my soapbox for the day. All these people out here who are like, you're so judgmental and this is all just normal. I'm sorry. I'll be the narcissist here and say I'm right and this is not normal.
It's not normal.
But look at the work that you do and
Yeah.
the education that you have. And, I've been doing my work for over 30 years. Scott, you were in your career. We've
Mm-hmm.
seen human behavior at its worst, and we've
Mhm.
seen patterns. And when you have patterns and when you have behaviors that don't add up, you
Mm-hmm.
have to ask questions. If
You
you don't,
do.
then you're not. And that I won't go down
Yeah.
the rabbit hole.
Yeah. No, you
No,
leave
there's no
nothing.
critical thinking. There's a lack of critical thinking these days. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You leave nothing unturned in cases like this until you figure it out. You just don't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's the 2 women in Oklahoma that went missing.
Custody
Yes.
situation and that,
Exactly. Another one.
yeah.
I mean, it's so prevalent and mm,
I listened to Pascal today about that, those 2 women who are missing, and
Mm-hmm.
he was talking about how the meetup spot, so these 2 women were going to go meet up with the paternal grandmother for a supervised visit with the kids because the kids are living with the paternal grandmother. So, and their meeting spot was this abandoned gas station that
what?
he was like, he cracks me up, but he was like, um, how did a judge, and the judge approved this location for the pickup, drop off, the visits, whatever. And he showed a picture of it and it is not even an address anymore. I mean, it is an abandoned,
Mm-hmm.
broken down gas station with no cameras, no civilization nearby, nothing. And, he's saying, of course, who knows, maybe they just put an address in the order and the judge didn't realize what this place was or whatever, but that was their meetup spot in a high conflict separation, child custody. So, like, of course, we have no idea what exactly happened, if the grandma, who's involved or whatever. But it was just like, these things are not normal. These things are just not normal. Yeah.
But they're also not as uncommon as people think, unfortunately.
Yeah.
True. Very true.
People don't hear about so many of the things that go on, and it's devastating when there are children involved, like we were saying.
Yeah.
Those are the cases that we had a case years and years ago where a judge in Fulton County gave custody of 2 little girls to their father who had clear psychological issues. And it took years for the mother. She never gave up. And she finally, that judge retired finally. And the new judge gave custody to our client. But it had been years. And it's like, what are you thinking? What?
Yeah. Yeah. And I try to be really careful too with these cases in the media, just because I know how things can look on the surface. Every single custody evaluation I do, I meet with one parent and I leave out of there and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, everybody's very believable and they're very cooperative and they're very, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to meet this other parent. And then meet the other parent and I'm like, oh my gosh, believe them. You know what I mean? It's like, it's complex. It's very complex. So like in this case, of the 2 that are missing, the mom and her friend that are missing, like the dad is in rehab right now. So he's not even out in the community. And that's why the kids are with the grandmother. The grandmother had accused the mother of some kind of abuse of some sort, or under her watch kind of abuse. And so the judge allowed the paternal grandmother to take the kids. But it's like, that's what we're being told. I promise you, we don't know who the crazy is yet. We don't know who it is yet. We don't know. Sometimes it's everybody. I was telling Scott the other day, sometimes you have a parent who would get a C- if there was parenting school, and then the other parent is a D-, and you got to figure out, well, which parent does this kid get to be? It's like
what's
no good option here. Yeah. So I try to be really careful because I know I have parents and people out there now who I did evaluations for 10 years ago who are still on a rampage about their involvement with me. And they would be very convincing in telling you that they were the ones that were wronged. And, so I try to be we never really know, you guys, but we do know what's normal and what's not. We do have a frame of reference. We do know what is normal and what's not.
Yeah. It's just, it's the cases with the children that are so common these days that we're seeing is just, and then that Adam Montgomery wouldn't even come to court for his trial.
I know. Isn't that ridiculous?
I know that the prosecution filed
They did. He's compelled to be there.
Is he? Did the judge sign the order?
Yeah.
Good.
And then he wrote something asking them to reverse that or something. Or I don't know if that was his response to the motion or if that was after the judgment was made.
Response. I didn't know the judge actually ordered
and there was no reason. Oh, the reason was I'm innocent, so I shouldn't have to be there. That was his reason. It's like, well, no, you're not. Actually, at this point, the jury has said you're not. That's how that works. But yeah. And that's, that's information. That's clinical information to me. That's just as important as anything. Like that shows me a lot right there.
Well, behavior.
Yeah. Again,
behavior. Guys, I don't understand. This is kind of, maybe people will disagree with me on this, and I'm totally good with that. But I don't understand how in some states, and maybe it's all states, I'm not really sure, how a client can have the option of not, or how a suspect can have the option of not attending their own trial. I don't get that.
Well, that woman up in Michigan, Shanda Vander
got to throw up in a trash can and then not show up for the rest of the trial.
Exactly. And she's another one who did horrific things to her own child. I'm sorry. Don't let me in a room with some of these women.
People with personality disorders can't turn it off.
No.
And so that's what you're seeing. You're seeing
Right.
them in the courtroom doing what they do in their regular lives,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is not cope and not act right. And that's, it's very much it's information. I mean, like Darrell Brooks, right? Like
Oh my
he
goodness.
doesn't turn that off just because he's in court.
Right.
Neither does Shanda, neither does Adam Montgomery. That's par for
Yeah.
the course for them.
It's personality, and like you just
Yeah.
said, Rachel, I mean, it's embedded in you. And I forget, you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I think, don't they say the age where your personality is pretty much forged is like 14 or 15, or am I off on that?
That's such a spectrum. I mean,
Okay.
we don't diagnose personality disorders until
Hmm.
adulthood, until after age 18. So
Okay.
you can say somebody has traits of a
Uh-huh.
certain personality, but we don't officially and I think it's even kind of dicey at 18. I mean, think about yourself in college. Like, think about yourself in your
Hmm.
early 20s. Are you that
Hmm.
same person today at all, even
No,
personality wise? It's like,
no.
chances are, if you took a personality test when you were 20, it looks a
Hmm.
lot different now. It's a more of a dynamic situation. So, 25, our brains are mostly fully developed,
Hmm.
and our probably more salient personality features are
Yeah.
present by then.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say it's probably older
Yeah.
than 50.
Very
I mean, there's always
interesting.
a trajectory, right? I mean, you can kind of be like, well, if this kid
Hmm.
stays on the same trajectory, then we kind of know what the personality development is going to look like. But
Sure.
yeah, a lot can happen.
Yeah.
Look
No.
at the kid that, did the Parkland shooting. There were
Yeah.
so many
Hmm.
warning signs with
Yep.
him too.
Yeah. But there's, and there's temperament too, which typically remains the same.
Mhm.
Temperament can really be the same from birth on. I mean, you see, like the fussy baby versus the relaxed baby, the strong-willed child versus the laid-back child. Like, those are temperament typically is like starts very early and is the same.
Yeah.
Type A, type B, type people, that kind of thing is usually pretty static throughout life early on.
Yeah. Yeah. When you brought up the Parkland shooting, it made me think of, what we were talking about earlier, Lori, with people being able to rise up in the wake of tragedy and so on and so forth. Another really good example of that is the dad of Alex Schachter, Max
Mhm.
Schachter, who is now on this massive, I mean, he has really pulled it together, and he's on this massive campaign with the
Mm.
Biden administration. He worked with the Trump
Mhm.
administration. He's trying to change things the way things are done in schools. Um, People like that are heroes to me. They really are, because
Absolutely.
yeah. Anyway,
Mhm.
that's
And
what
so asking, why do we think kids that eliminate, I'm assuming she's talking about like the school shooting stuff, are getting younger. Um, Bad rash. I don't know what that means, but I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is. I think,
Mhm.
you know, obviously things are different now than they were in the 80s. Things are different. I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
sure. I'm not sure we can point to one thing. It's just like a combination of a lot of everything is so much more accessible.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Kids now, at younger ages. I think part of that's a small piece of it, that their kids
Hmm.
have access to literally everything physically and on the internet. And,
Mhm.
um, I don't know. I always think, because of information exchange now, I think probably we just hear more about certain things because it's information flows so much easier now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know, I wish I knew the answer to that. We could,
Yeah. So I'm going to take a
yeah.
shot at Sonia's question here, Sonia. And if I butcher this and I make no sense, I apologize in advance. But Sonia's basically asking, why are there so many young killers? You know, I have, I'm a mixed bag on that, honestly. I think I still firmly believe that a lot of what we're seeing in these kids and their actions does start in the home. Um, I firmly believe that there is a problem with a lot of these kids in terms of their upbringing. Most of this stuff doesn't come out of a vacuum, but I also think that there's so many other influences now that we
Mhm.
didn't have back in the 70s, Rach and
Yeah.
Lori. I mean, it's like,
Well, I wasn't around in the 70s, so I don't know about that,
fine,
but I
whatever.
just had to throw that
Yeah, I mean, there's
throw
just so
that out
many
there.
other influences too that add to the pie,
Mhm.
but I firmly believe that we're just in a time where we're kind of I don't know, guys, we're kind of getting acclimated to it a little bit, and it's not acceptable, and it's not acceptable. But I don't know. Help me out here, Rachel, because I'm trying to break
Yeah,
it down and
I
make
think you're
more
right.
sense.
No, it does make sense what you're saying. I just think
Yeah,
there's so many factors we couldn't possibly list
hit
them
it
all.
on the
And
head.
she
Yeah.
she had also asked if yes, well, repeat what Dawn just said too. But I think I don't find that child abuse is going up. I've always thought that it was
Hmm.
bad. I think when
Hmm.
COVID hit, we had a different kind of type of situation go up. People could no longer escape their families. They were
Hmm.
stuck at home. And I
Right.
saw a lot more where I am and in the work that I did with domestic violence. And I don't know if the divorce rate went up shortly after COVID or not, when people were like, oh
Hmm.
my gosh, I can't like escape at work every day. I can't live with this person anymore. I did
Right.
see some of that. And Dawn makes a really good point that we are in an instant gratification society now. Impulsivity, kids,
Yes.
no one can wait for anything. It's
Mhm.
rush judgment for things. I think that is a very good point, Dawn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
Mhm.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought of where I was going to go with this, guys.
Sorry.
Sorry, but no, that's okay. Never mind. Go ahead, Rachel. I lost it.
I don't know. I mean, we could talk about, I mean, I was around in the 80s, so I can talk about that. We were talking yesterday about how great it was that like get up Saturday at 10 a.m. See ya. Left the house, walked a
Uh-huh.
couple miles to my friend's house across town by myself, 12 years old, no cell
Yep.
phone, nobody knew. Like, maybe I'll call you later. Maybe I'll just show back up at home for dinner. Maybe I'll sleep at my friend's house and call you from the landline. Like, it's just, I won't even let my 13-year-old walk to the park by herself that's a block away from us. Like, no
Yeah.
way. Like,
So
it's
sad.
just so different now. Yeah, things are very, very different now. And again,
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that's because we have more information, so we're more paranoid and we think things are more dangerous than they were before. I don't know. Yeah, you could
That's
hide. You know what, Sonia? That's why I put mine on do not disturb. Yeah, for the
yeah.
no cell phone. You could hide back in the day. Now there's now there's no hiding.
Yeah, especially with what is it, Life 360 and all those things?
We can
Hmm.
stalk our kids. We can yeah. Which
Exactly.
hey, I'm not opposed to that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I remember where I was going to go, Rachel, because from
go
what
for
you
it.
just said a second ago. But I agree with you guys. I don't know that child abuse is necessarily worse now. I think that with the reporting laws and the fact that it's come out of the closet somewhat through the years, I think it's being reported now more often. I know that when I was at the child abuse center that I worked in over the 6 years that I was there, I interviewed over 1,000 kids. I think you could say the same thing back in the 60s, but it just wasn't being reported like
Yeah.
it is now. And so, yeah,
Corporal punishment is understood in a different way now, so
exactly.
that's
I mean, people didn't
increases
talk
the
about things back in the 60s that they talk about now. It was
Correct.
mm-mm.
you kept all that behind closed doors.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I also
Mhm.
think that, you know, parents a lot of parents expect the schools to raise the kids and don't
Mhm.
want to, I've seen this up close and personal with a lot of
Yep.
clients that I've worked with where they don't understand why their kids are having issues, but they're off. They've got their kids in every single second of their children's day is structured. And so the
Mhm.
kids have no room to breathe.
Right.
And
Right.
parents, it's all about, oh, my child did this and my child did that. And the expectations put on kids, I think, can be unrealistic at times and
Mhm.
causes a lot of stress. And there's so much competition now because of social media that plays into
Mm.
it too, that kids think that they have to keep up with whatever it is. And
Right.
I think that I don't know. I wonder if we ever get to a tipping point and like can right this ship again and find some kind of harmony in society because
Mhm.
it's kind of scary.
It
Probably
is. I
not,
agree.
Lori.
From,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm the realist of this
Yeah.
duo.
Yeah, I'm
me
the
and Scott.
optimist. What can I say?
Hey, I'm realistic.
I always tell Scott. I mean, yeah, Scott's the idealist of the two of us. I think, believe it or not, a professional aside, I think he's the dreamer.
Fine.
I just always believe the best in everybody, or I used to. I've gotten better
Yeah.
about reading people, but I believe that there's good in people, but people can do some really awful things.
Yeah.
And I often wonder I look at them and I think, what made you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What made you do that?
I
don't,
know.
I
Yeah.
can't fathom intentionally hurting someone.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's me.
Well, yeah, guys, I think it's been over an hour. What do you
I
think?
know. Oh my
know.
gosh.
I know.
See, look, Sean is not an attorney, but I'm going to give him an honorary degree. He's in the UK. He's going to be a US attorney though, even though he's across the pond, as we say. He's trying to get Scott file charges on me all the time. You two can just make an appointment
Oh my
and
God.
I'll represent myself.
Sean, I like living on the edge sometimes, but Rachel's my friend and I do have to work with her. So
I mean, I
there
guess you
we
don't
go.
have to, but
Well, I choose to.
Lori, thank you so much for coming on with us. This is really cool. Very fun.
Thank you both. This was a
Thank
lot
you.
of fun, and you two have a great show. I wish you all the
Thank
best.
you.
I support you. Anything I can
Thanks.
do. And thank you so much for letting me talk family law and telling my story with
Yes.
my beautiful son, Greg. And
Yes.
yeah, I'm very grateful. This is fun.
It's
Well,
awesome.
Thank you for being here. It was wonderful having you, and we really do appreciate you a lot.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for what you're doing to really educate people, talking to Josh. And then, I have a completely different perspective. It's funny though,
Right.
because Josh and I both are in the Atlanta area. I've never met him, but one of
so
these I will. But giving people different insight and perspective into these different types of law and different kinds of things that people experience to hopefully expand people's, ideas and awarenesses.
We got to get I don't know if Dawn is still here. We got to get yep, she is. We got to get Dawn on here to talk about her CASA work. And
that
then
would be great.
Yeah.
Dawn and Scott can talk about that all day long. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Dawn, we have your number.
Yep. I just want to point out that Sean is now going to file charges on me as well, Rachel. So there we have it.
You know what, Sean? We're going to file charges on you. We're going to extradite you to the United States here and make you come on the show. Sean is a dad to beautiful children, and he's such a good dad. And I just wanted to say that and he cracks me up. I bet it's so fun to be one of his kids. Yeah, he's a cool dude.
Fun.
Well,
all right, guys.
Thank you for being here. Thank you guys all for being here. Lori, thank you again.
Yeah, thanks, Lori. We'll talk to you guys soon.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.